So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Very
Good
happy
morning.
to very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Very
Good
happy
morning.
very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure, sir.
I have read your papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning. Good morning, Miss Aliya Mirza. Good morning, Mr. Hitesh Siju.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shagor. I hope
Good morning.
very happy to have you all here.
It's our pleasure,
sir.
sir.
I'm well.
I have
How are
read
you,
your
sir?
papers, all of your papers. They are very interesting. I have learned a lot. So I hope
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we have two presenters online. Good morning, Vaishani. I think it's time, right? It's 10 a.m.
Yes, MM has also reminded the presenters to join, but they are not responding. So we will wait just 2 minutes more and then we'll start.
Sure, sure. You are the host, so I have to listen to you.
No, sir, it's totally on you. Okay, so we can start. The rest will be joining me.
Sure.
Shuroshi, start with me.
Good morning and welcome to everyone present here. We would be starting our session, parallel session 16, titled Stories of the Dispossessed, that will be chaired by Mr. Anirban Rai. Anirban Rai holds the post of an assistant professor in the Department of English, Presidency University, Kolkata. He is interested in visual arts and mythology, science fiction, literature of the Romantic period, and Gothic, and the depictions of pharaonic Egypt in novels, films, and popular culture. He is pursuing his PhD in the Department of English, Jadavpur University, under the supervision of Professor Nilanjana Gupta, and his focus is on the adaptations of Egyptian art and mythology in Western films and movies. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shurastri. It's nice to have you on board. Right. So I'm very pleased to. I won't use the word chair the session. I am having a discussion with everyone here. And first of all, I really appreciate Professor Dr. Mantosh Mondo's Herculean efforts in arranging and dividing the entire purpose of this conference into so many parallel sessions, and each one with a title. And the way that the sessions have been titled, I really like that. And thanks to all of our dedicated students for helping him with this. So we are here for parallel session number 16, and it's entitled "The Stories of the Dispossessed" for many reasons. And what I really like about the four papers and the four presenters that they have really given their individual efforts in providing an all-encompassing picture of the dispossessed, and that is through different media. So we have study of biography, we have study of the visual narrative, we look at the short stories, we look at larger fiction. So it's going to be a very informative session. And what I also like about this is that how it brings together the different states and their individual conditioning of caste. So we have papers that deal with Gujarat, with Maharashtra, with Madhya Pradesh, with South India. So it's going to be a very kind of informative session. So I won't waste time. So let's go to our first presenter here. That is the first paper in today's session. It's entitled Social Trajectory and Social Change in Y.P. Satyanarana's My Father Baliah. It's going to be presented by Mr. Pragnesh I. Solanki. Pragnesh Solanki has been working as an assistant professor in English since September 2013. That's also my year of joining in the College of Agriculture, Vadai, Gujarat, affiliated to Navsari Agricultural University. He is pursuing a PhD in Veer Namak South Gujarat University, Surat. His area of interest is Dalit literature in English. His title of the research is A Study of Dalit Protagonists in Selected Dalit Autobiographies. I am very pleased to welcome you here and how you are bringing together two different fields, and that makes you a very versatile presenter. So over to you.
Mr. Solanki, please unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Yes, now you are.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so in the introductory part, I'll focus on what caste is. In the Indian society, caste plays significant role in social communication. Earlier, education, occupation, and religion were mainly governed by the factor of caste that delimited the progress of the marginalized community. Caste formed a huge chasm between the two social poles, the upper caste and the lower castes. According to the reformist G.K. Devdar, caste was a kind of system which is strange and slavish, created harmful social norms and situations. Caste features degraded and unfree people, and a source of irksome and painful customs, which has created a restricted social structure that was previously an egalitarian society, trenching on the liberty of anterior times, and downtrodden the Indians with weapons of superstitions and social oppression. Devdar believes that for ages caste had destroyed the natural vitality of the race, and which resulted in a loss of individual liberty and individual consciousness, and demolished national consciousness on the whole. He says, and I quote, a nation whose individuals are moral weaklings, social slaves, and intellectual dwarfs can never make a strong and powerful nation intellectually, morally, and spiritually. I unquote. The reformers, Vaswani and Ranade, considered the caste system as a dark patch that hindered popular progress and the growth of popular freedom. This limitation of caste can be removed by bringing about political and social transformations in society. The downtrodden people need to be supplied with protective laws and reservations to compensate for their loss and humiliation. According to these social reformers, caste was regressive and deteriorative social harmony. It has forced the lower caste to become nemesis to the upper caste, and that has led to disharmony. It is considered an obstacle to the morality and political renaissance of the nation. Thus, it is a chain linked up with evil customs, needs a self-inquiry and change in the outlook of all forward-looking men of principle. It was due to this caste system there were inequalities in right to education, which the upper castes were privileged. It restricted human development as well as stagnancy in the social system on the whole. The Indian system of education in the past was non-universalist, parochial, and partisan. Ancient Indian education was, after all, the product of Indian outlook on knowledge and corresponding scheme of life and values. Education for more one reason was seen necessary and more or less limited only to the Dvijas caste. The untouchables were the only section of the society left out, with no accessibility to education of any kind. Educational right to the untouchables were regarded as sin, and this system prevailed. Education was exclusive to Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. Still, the Britishers laid the foundation of new education system, which circumscribed the unprivileged castes. Exclusion to educational opportunities to the Dalits caused their subjugation, exploitation, social degradation, and marginalization. Most significantly, static social system with its flaws. Education to the untouchable was commenced by the philanthropic act of missionaries with educational mission initiated by Alexander Duff of the Free Church of Scotland as an evangelical vocation. The missionaries took the initiative for imparting education and to prepare the untouchables for higher walks of life. To bring out social economic empowerment and consciousness, the missionaries initiated charitable schools and colleges and introduced humane side of the Western culture. Moreover, they also provided medical and social services. Thus, the missionaries played a vital role in making the Dalits formidable to resist the discrimination and exploitation by the elite caste. Further, it was through this education there was the scope for social mobility and social change through reformative movements. The non-Dalits too felt the need to reform the rigid caste system, and they endeavored to eradicate the caste system to bring change in the social outlook by catering education to the unprivileged castes. In the Andhra region, two of the pioneer reformers from caste Hindu, namely Kandukuri Vrislingam and Raghupati Venkatratnam Naidu raised a protest against the caste system and showed empathy for the downtrodden. Later, they were joined by Unnava Lakshmi Narayan and Ramaswamy Chaudhary to uplift the untouchables with education. More philanthropic caste Hindu came up with the social reforming cause like Maharaja of Pithapuram, who established schools and hostels for the Dalits. The socio-religious reforming organizations such as Pratna Samaj, Arya Samaj, and Brahmo Samaj, which not only condemned the caste system but also raised concern for education for the Dalits. Hence, education is the root cause that lies in social transformation, which is perceived in the biography My Father Baliah. It depicts how education acts as a pivotal point to social upliftment and amelioration of the Dalits. The biography is social document to trace the social trajectory of the Dalits through hardships and struggles of Baliah and his family, as author expresses in the preface of the biography, and I quote, "This is also the story of a community. It has been my lasting desire to show the present Dalit generation, and more so the future generations, how Dalits struggled." I unquote. Further, it also signifies social change that is instigated through education. The author says, and I quote, I have been myself I have myself been witness to the practice of untouchability and hope that future generations of Dalit will be free from these evil customs. Unquote. The paper explores several incidents and events narrated in the biography which imply social change and significance of education for social change. The biography focuses on the character of Ramaswamy, who is later known as Baliah. According to the social norm, the untouchables are not allowed to educate, and in case any attempt is made, it would be considered sin. Narsiya makes his son Ramaswamy aware of this to curb his desire to study. He says, and I quote, "No, son, we are not supposed to write and read. We commit a sin when we do that." I unquote. Ramaswamy satisfies his urge to study through his informal schooling by mullah. After many centuries of being denied learning by caste Hindus, a Muslim teacher sowed the seed of learning in the Yelukti family, something for which the coming generations would be forever indebted to this first teacher of the family. This was the dawn of the brighter sunshine to come. The change that has taken place in Narsiya's family was the British railway system provided the opportunity to the Dalits like Narsiya and his son Ramaswamy, and opened scope for new employment opportunities in railway, which redeemed the Dalits from exploitation and degrading jobs enforced by the upper castes. Ramaswamy's interest in study grew. He could experience the wonder of learning all by himself. He was discouraged and sometimes even condemned by people of his own community, who told him that it was a sin for untouchables to read and write. Rather than succumbing to this criticism, he fueled his determination to have his own children educated. Thus, the strong intensity in him to evolve and break the social trend was supplied by his interest in studies. The opportunity provided to Narsiya in the railways changed the course not only of his own life but also of the generations to come. It had also emancipated from all sorts of economic exploitations and dependency to the landlords. The significant change that occurred in the lives of Dalit was that the untouchables who lived in the railway colony enjoyed the same freedom as the higher castes. There wasn't any social restriction here. In colonial times, Cantonment areas and railway colonies were free zones for the untouchables, where they could aspire to better social lives and earn their livelihoods like caste Hindus. The economic opportunities were similar for both the touchables and the untouchables. Not only this, there was a change in the dressing style for both untouchable men and women. The women began to wear their saris in such a style that their ankles were covered and they could afford to wear gold jewelry. Ramasamy is later named as Baliah, who couldn't get proper education, is determined to provide better education so that it will certainly lead to upward social mobility. He foresees a quality prospect in his children's lives and he is committed to do whatever possible. It was Balia's deepest wish that his children to be educated and become high-ranking and well-respected officers in the railways. For this, he was prepared to work extremely hard. In order to make his dream come true, he admitted his children Abasaliyu, Narsimulu, and Anjia and Satya and railway school. He personally tutored them and advised to neglect any sort of discrimination from the upper caste student and focus on their studies. He was very attentive for his children's education. Every evening he sat with them and like a tutor made them repeat what they had learned in the classroom. Pachamma played an important role in monitoring her brother's education. She would make them sit down to study when her father was on duty in the evenings. All three generations were deeply indulged and engrossed in education, which they realized to be the only way out to all the drudgeries of the upper caste. He made provision for everything that they needed. The author says, I saw a father arranging all that I quote, I saw father arranging all that we require for our studies in the shed. He was trying to provide us an atmosphere in which we would not be disturbed from our studies. Father took our studies very seriously. In fact, he kept track of the progress each of us made in school and even met our teachers to inquire about our performance. I unquote. Baliah considered education as a significant move towards social change. He says, and I quote, our job is to give our children a good education, which will take care of the other things of life. I unquote. Baliah was determined to educate his children for their brighter prospect. His young son became an officer in railways. He was also the first person from the Yalukti family to reach this level. There were more matriculated children added in the family through Narsimlu and Anjia. His son Abhay Saleyu later joined college in Secunderabad and also did job in the night shift. Yadagiri was the brightest of the children among others and also did a job in the night shift. Yadagiri was the brightest of the children among others who succeeded matriculation with great result and secured admission in engineering college at Warangal without caste reservation. This was a rare moment in this community in which education has brought greater influence to bring change. Baliah had turned things around not only for his family but set an inspiration for the whole community to break the shackles and move forward. Even his wife toiled hard to provide good education to her children. It was very uncharacteristic for a Dalit family to get higher education, which was made possible by Baliah by encouraging his children to attain higher education. Through education, their social status and lifestyle has improved. The author says there was I quote, there was a change in the lifestyle of the family now. There was a change in the food. Not only did we now eat chapatis made of wheat flour. We had vegetables and rice at every meal. We had more physical comforts like writing tables, chairs, and ceiling fans. I unquote. There was economic stability and empowerment as Balia's children. Nursing and Satya got government jobs in government colleges. Nursing later became research scholar in Osmania University and earned pride for his family. The influence of education is clearly reflected in the social outlook of Baliah and sympathy as he sympathized the Brahmin girl who is driven out by her family due to her affair with his son. He calmly handles the situation and accepts her as his daughter-in-law. The author admits, and I quote, he did not care which caste the girl belonged to, nor was he apprehensive about what the community would think. He was thinking as a human being. He had not read any of the social reformers, but his compassion led him to appropriate action. He broke traditions and entrenched customs and was the first man in our family to open its door to inter-caste marriages. My father was a visionary and a great man, greater than many intellectuals who claim to be Ambedkarites and yet remain against inter-caste marriages. I unquote. These transformations in education and lifestyle had changed them great deal. Mr. Narayan, his high cadre official Brahmin community, had offered his daughter's proposal for Balia's son Satya, and the wedding was fixed. Education among Dalits had also transformed the elite caste perspective to some extent, which is illustrated through this marriage type. This led to the grandest of the marriages by far, not only in the family but also in the whole community. Balia's commitment to uplift his family and led it towards socio-economic mobility is acknowledged by his son. He says, and I quote, my father had not been rich and never owned a house, but he enabled his son to reach a position where they could make their fortunes. I unquote. His determination to earn social dignity and live life in pride is remarkable. Though he is unaware of Ambedkarite philosophy, he still has imbibed a formidable character in him, right to live life in dignity. He strongly admits, and I quote, you must abolish slavery yourself. It is disgraceful to live at the cost of one's self-respect. Self-respect is a most vital factor in life. Without it, man is mere a cipher. To live worthily with self-respect, one has to overcome difficulties. It is out of hard and ceaseless struggle one alone that one derives strength, confidence, and recognition.
Professor Solanki,
Okay.
sorry for interruption.
Okay.
Could you please wrap up maybe in 1 to 2 minutes?
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
It's actually 20 minutes almost. If
Okay,
you could
okay.
wrap up.
I'll just
Sorry for
2
interruption.
minutes.
Yeah,
2
yeah,
minutes.
sure.
1 or
Please,
2
please,
minutes. Okay.
please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for reminding me. Okay. He wants his family to be an ideal example in the community by never succumbing to any injustice or exploitation. He remembers his father's piece of advice. I quote, do not bend yourself before anyone. No matter whether you are starving, your pride should never be mortgaged. I unquote. This hereditary ideology has yielded tremendous turnaround in succeeding generations of Balia's family. Thus, the biography projects the Yalukti family and their journey. Balia's son Satya admits the vital contribution of Balia in his family and his community. He acknowledges Balia's spirit of living. And I quote, the man who had taught his sons discipline, made them tough and uncompromising, enabled them to reach the highest possible heights in education and given them a good standing in society, breathed his last. He had set an example for many Dalit families and was popular among not only Dalit communities but among all railway employees from Sikandrabad to Kazipet. He was no social reformer and had not read Ambedkar, but he fought social evils at his own level and was uncompromising in his fight. He had refused to be subservient to anyone throughout his life and had therefore commanded respect even from those who belong to the higher castes. I am quote. To conclude, social change and upward mobility of the downtrodden community, education plays significant role as exemplified through the biography. Education and determination to resist the social injustice makes their life more fruitful and worth living. It has opened up a new horizon to make significant impact not only on their personal lives but also on the societal level. This is it from me. I conclude my paper here, and you can ask me anything regarding this. Thank you to listening me very carefully and
Uh,
reminding me, sir.
Thank you, Professor Solanki, for your very
Sir,
insightful.
kind request. My name is Pragnesh.
Right,
Pragnesh.
right. Okay, so thank you, Pragnesh, for your very insightful presentation. Without any delay, I'll invite the next speaker. I have noted down the feedback, but I don't want to interrupt. So we'll be listening
Okay.
to the interactive discussions, and I will
Okay.
provide the feedback after everyone has presented. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you, Pragnesh.
Thank you, sir.
So our next presentation is entitled Bhimayana, an attempt to reconstruct Dalit memory and Dalit consciousness by Mr. Atmadeep Dash, independent researcher, West Bengal, India. So Mr. Dash is an independent scholar with research interests in the areas of visual film studies, visual culture, popular culture, memory studies. That's very interesting, Atmadeep, and postcolonial studies. He has completed both BA and MA in English from Benares Hindi University. Uh, I also love visual studies, so I think I am going to learn a lot from your presentation. So over to you, Mr. Dash.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Am I audible and visible?
You are audible at the dip, but not visible.
Okay. Am I right now?
Yes, you are now audible and visible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity to offer me this presentation here. And title of my paper is Bhimayana, an attempt to reconstruct Dalit memory and Dalit consciousness. Here I begin. In the last few decades, with the publications of Art Spiegelman's Mouse, Joe Sacco's Palestine, Marjan Satrapi's Persepolis, and such other important graphic works, graphic novels occupied a prominent place in contemporary literature as a safer tool to present serious and realist stories of subjugation and trauma with words and images. Highly political in nature, Mouse depicts the experiences of Holocaust survivors. Palestine documents the plight of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and Persepolis narrates an autobiographical account in Iran amidst crucial political turmoil and wars. These works, using the tool of personal and collective memory, brought out the experiences of people who suffered, who were marginalized, and became victims of several inhuman decisions to the world and challenged the dominant discourse of history that rarely talks about the ordinary human beings. In India, Amar Chitrakatha and several other retellings of Ramayana and Mahabharata epics and children's books were the precursors of this medium that since the 90s started exploring the possibilities of expanding after the publication of Arjit Singh's River of Stories, a graphic novel similar to Sako's graphic journalism in Palestine that tried to document the impacts of building Sardar Sarovar Dam in Narmada Valley. In the last 2 decades, many important works related to socio-political issues have emerged from India, including Vishayati Ghosh's Delhi Come, Sharnath Banerjee's Corridor, Amrita Patel's Curry, Jay Undurti and Harsha Mohan Chattoraje's Hyderabad, a graphic novel, and Shividya Natarajan and S. Anand's Bhimayana, Experiences of Untouchability. The common element within all these works is how they employ the aesthetics of the comic medium to encapsulate and represent historical realities marked by segregation, subjugation, and structural and physical violence. Bhimayana, Experiences of Untouchability. The seminal work that I have chosen as the subject for this research paper was authored by Anirban and S. Anand and was illustrated by Durga Subramanian, biography of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a conversation that occurs between a man and a woman at a bus stop. The book starts with a man from the general category who expressed his frustration over the caste-based reservations, and it is followed by several episodes of Ambedkar lives shared by the woman to contextualize the caste problems of India in past and present. The novel is divided into 3 books. First book, Water, is based on the childhood experiences of Ambedkar, the insults and discrimination he faced during his school years. This part also explores the significance of Mahar Satyagraha, which was led by Ambedkar regarding the access of water from public tanks and is rarely talked about in history textbooks. Second book, Shelter, is about the days Ambedkar spent in Baroda, when he had to struggle to get a place for living and his caste invited segregation from both Hindu and Parsi communities. Third book, Travel, is based on his later experiences as a leader of the untouchable communities of India. This part also provides an insight on the Gandhi-Ambedkar debate over equal rights and separate electorates for oppressed castes. All 3 books are presented with newspaper reports of contemporary India to prove how the caste-based problems, violence, segregation, which Ambedkar experienced almost a century ago, are still are still there in every little corner of our Indian society. My paper intends to examine the way this graphic novel represents personal, social, and historical memories of Dalits, and will argue over how it can help in recovering marginalized Dalit voices from the peripheries of exploratory, experimental, and unorthodox modes of representation to raise readers' awareness of social, political, and historical issues and ontological approaches to these concerns. India has been the prey of casteism since the Vedic period, and it is still prominent from villages to metropolitan cities, from tea stalls to luminous institutions. And this hidden apartheid of the lower caste marginal from people unfortunately did not become a global concern. In history, in mainstream narrative, their struggle to secure a place in society and to live respectfully has always been neglected, forgotten like the contributions of Ambedkar as a social reformer. While Gandhi turned into a global icon of anti-imperialism, stepping outside the country and voicing against the racial segregation in South Africa, untouchable Ambedkar in his own country fought against the Brahminical imperialism that did not even allow Dalits to drink water, but Mahasatyagraha, which was a huge uprising against untouchability, is long forgotten, along with such other uprisings. In India, in Indian history, as written by the Savarna historians, Ambedkar is just the father of Indian constitution. Textbooks hardly mention why he is important in Indian history as an icon of Dalit movements, democracy, women rights, and folk cultures. I quote, Vijay is a small effort to address this anomaly and make Ambedkar's story universal. If the lives and experiences of Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, and Malcolm X could resonate universally, Ambedkar's and those of millions of Dalits in India ought to as well. Unquote. S. Anand writes at the end of the book to state the purpose of writing Vimayana, thus making the graphic novel a visionary attempt of reshaping the history, memory, and consciousness. As Sharan Kumar Limbale had marked the features of Dalit literature, Bhimayana, with its simple and graphic storytelling, I quote, artistically portrays the sorrows, slavery, degradation, ridicule, and poverty endured by Dalits, unquote. And recognizing the centrality, it is, I quote, thoroughly saturated with humanity's joys and sorrows. It regards human beings as supreme and leads them towards social revolution, unquote. Derived from Sanskrit, the word Dalit means, in many Indian languages, broken or oppressed. It is an umbrella term to refer to those communities that are considered as lower caste, outcasts, specifically marked by untouchability, and share a common history and experience of social exploitation and marginalization. In the case of former untouchable caste, they were regarded as unclean or polluted by others because of their hereditary performance of tasks such as disposing of human waste and animal carcasses, although they also performed other kinds of manual labor, and were forbidden from entering temples or using village wells, expected to consume food not wanted by anyone else and sometimes not truly fit for human consumption, and they generally lived in extreme poverty. As a group, they remain significantly disadvantaged in relation to the rest of the Indian population, as measured by the levels of literacy, income, employment, health, and security. Presentist models of cultural identity overlook the role of historical awareness in shaping people's imagination of who they are, of which culture they belong to, and where they stand in relation to others. The lack of attention to historical consciousness in the constitution of identity, particularly where groups have faced subjugation, exclusion, or discrimination, needs to be recognized that the way people position themselves in relation to cultural options are understandably and quite legitimately affected by their awareness of historical relations, especially those involving inequalities of power between the various communities among whom they find themselves. Their struggle for identity recognition and social justice thus remains what's word for right. I quote, though they seem to invoke an origin in a historical past with which they continue to correspond, actually identities are about questions of using the resources of history, language, and culture in the process of becoming rather than being. Unquote. This highlights the reason this book traces back the Gandhian orthodoxy that considered Dalits should not be given the right for a separate electorate, emphasizing on the importance of Ambedkar in democratic system with equal rights for all. Vijayana further includes the annihilation of caste in the discourse, stating the central point of disagreement between Ambedkar and Gandhi that identity cannot conceivably be constructed within the category of Hindu. Gandhi strove for a reform of Hinduism, which implied not an abolition of caste, but an equality of status between castes, along with the complete eradication of untouchability. Ambedkar, more sensitive than Gandhi to the realities of lower caste experience and the stubbornness of upper caste attitudes, sought the establishment of a new identity for groups historically designated as outcast or lower caste, an identity situated outside of and in opposition to Hinduism. He believed society certainly cannot be formed then between groups where one is treated as untouchable by the others, as there is no consciousness here of participating in the life of a single community with shared aspirations. Dalits are, moreover, routinely subject to violence, sometimes of extreme forms. In fact, in some ways, upper caste violence against Dalits has actually escalated in backlash against their efforts at improving their condition. Every part of the book comes with reports of violent and inhuman incidents in independent India which are similar to the experiences of Ambedkar's own life. Some are denied water, some are denied shelter, some are mob lynched, while some are thrown out of hospital buildings. Haunting images become alive and burst the bubble in which privileged people are living. We understand. Constitutional rights, basic human rights, reservation, nothing became able to erase and annihilate caste-based discrimination completely. Even upliftment in class position through education, money, and status cannot affirm that the person will not be separated for his caste. Moreover, education moving out of the community can lead the marginals living extreme loneliness and seclusion. As the novel shows, Ambedkar devoid of shelter, health, amenities, and good friends in his biologies. This whole strategy of forming connectedness is a reminder of the constructed nature of all historiography and biography, signaling the connected nature of cultural memory, its many sources and origins. Vijayana thus amplifies each day's struggle of every man from Dalit communities. The words and the visuals become universal and contributes to form Dalit Chetna, a model of Dalit consciousness that equates with the production of Dalit literature. As stated by Laura Blue, I quote, Dalit literature relies on the idea of Dalit Chetna as the ideal for all Dalit literature. It is a principle of Dalit consciousness that writings are made authentic only through real life experience of Dalit identity. Unquote. To do so, Bhimayana trusted upon the collective memory of Dalit communities. In his book, Matter and Memory, Barson talked about memory, calling it a point of contact between the spirit and matter and interpreting it as a subjective experience of that certain substance. Maurice Holbrook, taking the study further, remarks, I quote, the greatest number of memories come back to us when our parents, our friends, to other persons recall them to us. It is in this sense that there exists a collective memory and social frameworks for memory. Unquote. Thus, collective memory is more likely to occur when a lot of people are involved in the same historical events, in a sense that each person has, within the boundaries of his own consciousness, an image, experience, or gestalt, which other people have also experienced, and these images or gestures largely coincide. For Dalit communities, it is the apartheid, the violence they experienced through generations. In Vimayana, the personal experiences of Ambedkar become a synthesis of group memory of Dalits and the prevailed social attitudes. Memorializing caste and caste-based trauma against the dominant and hegemonic currents of historical memory requires the aid of a powerful discourse of the verbal and visual kinds. And this is precisely what Srividya Natarajan and S. Anand did so poignantly that it became difficult to see where the national signifier of caste ends and the collective memory of oppression begins. As Joe Petty argues, graphic novels represent the relationship between language as a national signifier and the image that affords understanding at a more universal level. Further, the task of collective or global memory of oppression is served in this tension between the personal and the communal, and the structure of graphic novels lends itself to explorations of memory because it is already concerned with the production of chronological order. For the next part, I have made a small PPT, which I'll play simultaneously with my presentation. Uh, is my screen visible? Can anyone please answer?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I will be discussing how the graphic novel Bhimayana used art as a tool to represent Dalit consciousness, delivering the collective memory of Dalit communities. A new society, and a new human being have been revealed in Dalit literature. For the first time, the reality of Dalit literature is distinct, and so is the language of this reality. Unquote. This was said by Blue, 2014. Though this literary work has English as the medium of conversation and other dialects of regional languages after translation, it uses hand-drawn paintings and sketches in her own art style. to communicate stories and messages to the readers as Martin Satrapi had noted. I quote, in graphic novels, the images help tell the story. Images are a way of writing. Unquote. Pradhan Gond is a tribal community belonging to the larger Gond community of central India. Using such a tribal regional art form to express the experiences of Dalits expands the circumference of the graphic novel, asserting independence from any form which has been associated with dominant culture. The art form becomes a sign to incorporate the voices of all people from oppressed, neglected, marginal communities. The ecology of Roland Bonda is such that even when dealing with urban subjects, we see free-falling animals, birds, and trees in landscape without a horizon. Thus, the train becomes a snake, the intimidating fort becomes a lion. Often, Ambedkar turns into a bus or into a park in figure 3, and the people who receive him with happiness in Charlesgao are conveyed to a dancing peacock or fingers of two welcoming hands, which is referred in figure 4. From houses to cars, cats to ponds, each object becomes alive with eyes and often with other facial features, as they are keeping accounts of everything around them in silence. Even the word and thought bubbles are animated with such features. The word bubbles are in the shape of birds for the characters who are victims of caste to employ tenderness. Thought bubbles have the mind's eye on them, carry the words that cannot be heard but can be perceived, and the bubbles that come out from the benefits of caste look like some venomous creatures with sharp tails. Through these visual metaphors, Bhimayana, as a post of Dalit consciousness, constitutes a new iconography for Dalit literature, Dalit aesthetics, and graphic novels. The graphic novel also challenges the established pattern of comic medium. Vamps withdraw rectilinear panels and boxes and use entire pages to draw the scenic scenes, making the narrative more diffused and open. They mention, I quote, we'd like to state one thing very clearly at the outset. We shall not force our characters into boxes. It stifles them. We prefer to mount our work in open spaces. Our art is khulla, which means open, where there's space for all to breathe. Unquote. They use Digna pattern to create structure without boxing the characters. It is seminal element of bone art, and many communities decorate their houses with this art form to be pierced with love. Nearly every line seen in this novel comes from Digna patterns, and these patterns are applied to decorate the background and connect the scenes to one another. The background for graphic novel works as the misoso works in cinema. It communicates with the internal state of the characters without words. In many pages, Vyas use colors dramatically for the background to convey the emotions and the inner thoughts, while people throughout the book remain in black and white, erasing the barriers of
Atmadeep,
caste, class,
hello,
race.
hello,
Yes.
Atmadeep. Sorry for interruption. It's almost time. If you could wrap up. Okay.
Okay. I'm just concluding. After independence, though Ambedkar was as popular as Gandhi and Nehru, the growing disillusionment with Congress leaders and politics since 60s gradually sidelined him from the popular national discourse, and slowly he was transformed into a folk icon by many marginal communities around the country. Through oral traditions, some remembered him in their songs, some worshipped him as a deity, but many of them forgot who he really was in the process of memory making. For instance, in many songs over Jhumar and Bhojpuri marriage songs, he played an elder of the family, not a thinker, leader, and activist. Addressing these instances of icon making, Vijayana is not a successful attempt to stand opposition to the hegemony of Brahminical society and culture. As Dalit activists, writers, scholars withdraw the Brahminical epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, Bhimayana, portraying the life of Ambedkar, becomes an alternative epic contesting the hegemony of Dalit people. As Vasbi Oza noted that Bhimayana, I quote, subverts the commonsensical nationalist narrative of what constitutes an epic, unquote. A significant part of this subversion is incorporated through formal tropes, while the storytelling has been done in subjective and objective dimensions. The artwork is presented in fluid and khulla form for its subjectivity, and the montage of news report and speech excerpts for the objectivity. It further contributes to the collective search for cultural, societal identity for Dalit people and their art forms. Thank you. Excuse me, sir, you are not audible. Please
Oh, sorry,
unmute
sorry,
yourself.
sorry. Yeah, that was a fascinating discussion, Atmadeep. I'm very sorry to rush you. You reminded me of my own online classes based on PPTs, and I love painting myself. Okay, I have some feedback for you, but after everyone has finished. So, very
Okay.
move to our third presentation. It's entitled Caste, Casteism, and Anticasteism, a critical study of Gujarati Dalit short stories. So we have two presenters, Dr. Manish Pandya and Mr. Hitesh H. Siju. Dr. Manish Pandya has been working as a principal of Tolani Commerce College in Adipur, affiliated to KSAV Kutch University, Bhuj, Kutch, Gujarat, India. He has published research papers and has participated in numerous national and international seminars and conferences. He is a member of many academic committees and NAAC peer team. Hitesh H. Siju is a research fellow in the Department of English, KSK, Kutch University. He is currently working on Gujarat Dalit short stories. His prominent research interest is subaltern studies, particularly Dalit studies. He is also interested in new and critical approaches in English literary studies. Apart from that, he has fascinations towards futuristic scientific approaches in Dalit narratives. That's really unique. So over to you, dear presenters. Uh, please try to stick to the time, okay? And welcome to
Okay.
Presidency.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I'm Hitesh Siju, and due to some reasons, my co-author is unable to join this session. Uh, am I audible, sir?
Yes, Hitesh, you are audible clearly.
Okay, sir. Uh, my paper titled Casteism and Anticasteism, Critical Study of Gujarati Dalit Short Stories, focuses on uh, the uh, I apologize for since my device is malfunctioning. The aim of current study is manifold. The primary purpose is to offer a critique on caste and bring out the important incidents and rationale around anti-casteism through the reading of select Gujarati Dalit short stories. Further, it follows the articulation of the ideas of caste, ostracism, and casteism in these short stories through the reading the issues relating to the practice of caste-based discrimination among Hindu social groups. It aims to follow the concept of anti-casteism and sociocultural questions arising out of persisting frameworks persisting social frameworks through reading of such stories. So the research article is divided in two sections. The first section aims to arrive at the understanding of ideas of casteism, and anti-casteism using Meena and Handa's uh, philosophical foundations of anti-casteism, while the second section offers critique of short stories from Gujarat. So, caste, as the foremost source of social identity, order, and social belonging, grounds the clash between caste groups and among similar clans, which remains prominent rationale behind the existence of discrimination in society. Traditionally, Indian society has been divided into Varna divisions along with caste, jati, kul, gotra, that functions as the indicator of social order and hierarchy. Membership to such class caste varna is hereditary in nature, that is to be determined by birth. Caste function to run the social and religious realms effortlessly in the ancient Indian society, which found existence in modern society as well, and which has become a rigid rule. Uh, However, the overemphasis on high-born and low-born conceptions became so rigid that it triggers increase in sense of unequal exploitation, uh, discrimination, oppression, and social prejudice among caste subcaste groups. Caste refers to maintenance of inherent social order and hierarchy. Uh, According to Mina Danda, caste is a according to Mina Danda, and I quote here, caste is a category of social belonging attributed because of birth within a group, itself placed amongst a historically shifting hierarchy of groups, subject to economic, political, and status rewards for continued allegiance and losses or penal, penalties for transgression of group boundaries maintained by endogamy. I unquote. Casteism denotes adherence to caste system, where despite abolition of discrimination based on caste, race, and birth under Indian Constitution, the caste-based regulations and practices find existence in modern society. Casteism refers to the treatment of a person based on his or her caste prejudices, which becomes, according to Meena Tanda, and I quote, a form of inferiorization, I unquote. Understanding of caste and caste-related regulations play an important role in shaping the lives of people who suffer caste-based discrimination and humiliation. These short stories unpack few occurrences in different realms, the victims of caste discrimination uh, and casteism. Uh, Anticasteism claims a strong opposition to caste discrimination, inequality, and humiliation caste has caused. Uh, in Danda's view, I quote, uh, it unpacks the unethical operations of caste, I unquote. Anti-caste ideology seeks freedom from the age-old framework that enables form of discrimination based on caste, the humiliation, exploitation, and oppression it causes. Uh, it attempts to remove customary established conventions by stressing the equal treatment of person, each caste person and society as a whole. The present array of Gujarati Dalit short stories pour out observations on unscrupulous practice that reproduce the erstwhile existing rules, uh, persistence of which makes Dalit lives desperate for new beginnings. The stories pay immediate attention to the plight of Dalits who suffer humiliation and discrimination based on caste prejudices. It condemns the deliberate attempts to keep caste alive through imposition of conventions, customs, and heredity, among other things. So the first story is of B.N. Vanker's the sacred thread, uh, uh, in which caste emerges as a historical root of Dalit suffering in traditional society. The short story opens in the Indian village where caste-based rules persist, and fundamentally, the society is caste-centric. One acknowledges the significance of caste as the story begins with Karsan Dosha, the father of the son, contemplating over his son who has not visited him since past 1 year. Uh, it throws light on reasons behind his hatred towards caste and caste-related customs. The past incidents revolve before his eyes one by one, unfolding humiliation and unequal treatment of his son, Megnath. The tradition of the sacred thread ceremony, generally performed on the day of Dashera, Kasandosa believes this tradition is an early establishment which functions to protect the villagers, and he is obliged to entertain this ceremony. He reminds the last year's incidents when his son Megnath performed the sacred thread ceremony with enthusiasm, who received humiliations while the performance of uh, this tradition for his caste belonging. He was dressed with new clothes, boots, and was looking attractive. Noticing this, the upper caste villagers derogatorily comment on his caste, his belonging, and humiliate him in front of the crowd, in front of the villagers. Uh, I quote, uh, he is low born, and yet see how proud of himself he is. Uh, I unquote. The one of the crowd members said during the performance of the ceremony. While while the ceremony was performed, the the sarpanch of the village was also present. The entire crowd made mockery of Megnath, including Sarpanch. The entire crowd mocked over the humiliation and dishonor of Megnath. After this incident, Megnath realizes that humiliation and discrimination is rooted in the tradition-bound ceremonies, and therefore he should give up. He should give up the tasks which are caste bound, which are caste bound. Megnath challenges tradition, saying, I quote here, that Bapa, now onwards it is not our task. Leave it. Tell them we will not do this. I unquote. He counters. He opposes caste-oriented tasks and blind adoption of tradition. His operation of tradition echoes anti-caste thought. Dalits, previously a precluded section, leave each step with the fear of ostracization. The anxiety of being excluded from the society always remains a major issue for Dalits as a kind of casteism for the dispossessed, socially, culturally, and politically. The various events exposing caste and caste-ridden occupations are expressed through Karsandosa's memories of recent past events that had happened in the village among the village folk. His mind engrossed in various events as follows, and I quote, when Mathuria had refused to shout, the village people had gathered and
Dear
compelled him.
Hitesh, hello, dear Hitesh, you have 5 minutes, okay? So you have five
Okay,
more minutes. Thank you.
okay. Uh, Khemla had to suffer a lot when he refused to dispose the garbage. When Manga had not filled the mud in the pit, the village folk had severed their relationship with him, uh, and when Shania had not thrown mud cakes into Holi, they were all annoyed. I unquote. Uh, the upper caste village folk wield enormous power over the subaltern folk since they have been cursed and crushed down by the casteism. The above fragment from the short story and masks caste conscious society and how conservative they are in nature. The conservation and blind adoption of rigid social mores and outdated laws becomes fatal for suppressed segments of society like Dalits. Uh, in Yes Sir of Pravin Gadvi, Dinesh shares multifarious experiences of caste based discrimination in the realms of social, education, and political administrator services. He enters into the state administrative services with objectiveness, unbiased, and selfish outlook towards the civic welfare, where he initially where he becomes a subject of casteism and discrimination in educational sectors, where he observes unequal treatment of Dalit student in school as well as in college education. During his school education, the teacher never sit near Dalit and probing to examine answer books of Dalit as they do with the uh, the answer books of other caste students. Besides the mistreatment from teachers, his classmates who claim to be beyond caste and creed to mistreat him. Uh, the pangs of Dinesh are rooted in prevailing caste-oriented social order. Further, he reveals that the city is not without a caste distinction by referring to the different outlooks of caste Hindu towards Parsis and Dalits, showing generosity towards Parsis while only contempt for the Dalits. The caste distinctions are visibly found in the place where he lived, uh, and where revolution was yet to happen. The story further unfolds disputes over an implementation of housing scheme for Dalits, where an MLA belonging to upper caste interferes in matter to confirm Dalits be allotted housing land at outskirts. Dalits in village have uh, a dispute over land. Raghavji Madhat's short story Betrayal unravels the political intrigues and tactics of which Somo becomes victim. It shows how a Dalit falls victim in political and personal gains of upper caste Ramubai, who stands by his side during these hard times. However, it is Soma's illusion which melts after he discovers the other side of Ramubai's character. Uh, it throws light on purpose-oriented need of Dalit, in which upper caste people employ Dalit for their own sake but refuse to recognize after their need is fulfilled. So happens with Soma, who is known well-mender, who becomes bedridden after accidentally falling during working, and he breaks his leg, hence unable to go to work. Soma becomes the victim of situation over which he does not have control. Caste as a tool for discrimination becomes crucial in shaping Dalit life, since it functioned as an indicator of social status and hierarchy. Though the discrimination based on such practices has been outlawed, the prevalence of caste-based discrimination is found among people in post-independence era. Thus, the the study sheds light on how caste-based identity and further practice of casteism makes Dalits live under the unpleasant hardship where people are engaged in social mores and outworn, uh, outworn traditions. The study offers anti-casteism practices to such traditions, which scroll down development of individual and further of the nation. Uh, Here I conclude with the note that Meghnad's humiliation, discrimination, and birth ascribed prejudice, Carson Dosa's fear, and the events of enforcement of tradition-based duties unmask a prevalence of casteism, and the rebellion and do away with outworn traditions reveals anti-casteism in BN workers, the sacred thread. The study highlights Dinesh's frequent exposition to caste discrimination in education, social and political civil services, and his opposition to caste-based identity in Pravin Gadvi's Yes Sir, which ponders over anti-casteism. Raghavji Madhar's short story unmasks deceptive nature and political tactics of upper caste Ramubai, who exploits Soma for his personal gains and eventually betrays him after elections. The upper caste characters in all the chosen stories are equipped with tool of caste to defame and inferiorize Dalits. It is all from my side, sir.
Thank you, dear Hitesh, for uh, kindly cooperating with us regarding the time management.
Thank
So we have our final presenter, uh, Miss Aliya Saba Mirza, who is a PhD scholar in the Department of English, Aligarh Muslim University. She is pursuing research on Vijay Tendulkar. She is NET qualified and selected for Maulana Azad National Fellowship. Congratulations for that. Her presentation is titled Voice of the Dispossessed, a study of Vijay Tendulkar's play Kanyadaan. So over to you, Aliya, and we request you to stick to time. We are already running late, so it will be really helpful if you could conclude by 11:30. All the best.
Thank you, sir. So I'll try to analyze my thoughts on Tendulkar's play Kanyadaan from the lens of the paradigmatic shift at the conflicting emotional level, on the stigma of the caste, on the plight of the Dalit women who lie at the bottom of the hierarchical structure. And so Vijay Tendulkar wrote the play Kanyadaan in 1983 at the end of the decade of the Dalit activism in Maharashtra. It was staged at a time when the problem of the reservation was at the top of the debate. The title of the play Kanyadaan is actually the ritual which is codified by Manu. The play shares the history of the Dalit movement, the working of the Reformation as a failed experiment, and the consequences of the mental deformation. The play underpins the economic rat that the Dalits face, the filth in which they survive, the domestic violence, and the institution of the marriage. The play's hero is Nath Devalkar, who is a liberal reformer, and the play's anti-hero is Arun Athawale, a Dalit boy. They can be studied from the two perspectives, the working of the reformation process through intercaste, and second, the lacuna and the failure in the reformation process. Through language, behavior, and response to the situation, Tendulkar constructs the two cultures, one of the upper caste and second of the lower caste. The play depicts the structure of Dalits, their daily struggle, malice, and their efforts to tell their story, reshape their broken identity, and write their own experiences and their desire to avenge what their generations have faced. In addition to this, the play reverberates the plight of Dalit women and heralded sexual violence at the hand of the Dalit men. The play creates a notion of the Dalit masculinities as bestial and a culture of disposition that cannot change easily. After being inspired by his autobiography and the poem's Nath daughter Jyoti, a Brahmin girl decided to marry Arun Athawale, a Dalit boy who has a stern face and a dark complexion. Jyoti's brother Jayaprakash and her mother Seva could not digest how Jyoti would adjust herself to the Dalit pattern of living. Arun's Dalitness is revealed amidst his conversation and the efforts to make Seva uncomfortable. Arun expressed his discomfort in the big house of the Jyoti, and he wanted Jyoti to stay with him. He felt as if the big house will swallow him, and explained how he feels safer on the street. His male chauvinism led him to describe a man in the kitchen as fancies, and he feels challenged when Dalit discounts his statement of beating her. He associated his manners with that of the scavengers. He revisited the life led by the Dalit ancestors and how even their voices could pollute the ears of Brahmin. He shared their living lifestyle, like eating the dead animal flesh, going for sanitation in the open, eating stale bread, and living in a hut of 8 by 10 feet without rags on their back, which he equated to living in hell. He boldly discusses the business of brewing illicit liquor with his mother-in-law Seva as one of their source of survival in future. He spread his legs and sat in an uncouth manner. His vengeance is visible when he shares his intention to set the whole world on fire, strangle the throat, rape, kill, and drink the blood of high caste society. He cracked the joke of catching a Brahmin dame and twisted Jyoti's hand. Nath, as a reformer, takes pride in the decision of Jyoti to marry Arun, who is having a love affair. An intercaste marriage was considered as one of the outcomes of the shedding of the caste system by B.R. Ambedkar. However, Nath perceived it as a solution to break the caste system, which in turn brought more pitfalls in the life of Jyoti. Jyoti's marriage with Arun was a nightmare. She came back to her home and left Arun, who had beaten her. But Nath insisted on carrying on the marriage. This intercaste marriage was a remarkable experiment that Nath wanted to see as a successful project without failure and set as an example. In a drunken state, Arun visited the Nath house to apologize to Jyoti for thrashing and beating. He condemned that scavengers are destined to rot in shit. Arun informed Seva that he never claimed to be a civilized man and he inherited the beating of his wife, who half dead, from his own father who had beaten her mother, and sobs echoes his heart. Seva accused Dalit of not having an ability to understand what gratitude means. Arun's autobiography has brought him fame. He describes the humiliation that Dalit underwent. By the closing of the play, Nath admitted that the book was a hoax and compared Arun with a Dalit and a devil who can speak opportunities. Nath realized that his urge to uproot the caste system was maniacal. The play, on the other hand, depicts the mental deformity that is instilled in Jyoti. Nath has infused the liberalism and humanism into Jyoti, and she blindly followed the Nath's ideal. Ideas like one should not turn one's back into the battlefield, it is cowardice to bow down the circumstances, and poems like I march with utter faith in the goal, cowardice, stay ashore, every wave open a new path for me. All these are the instances and poems and the quotes that has actually lead to handicap the identity and the thinking ability of Jyoti. On the one hand, it deals with the stigma of the caste, the play, and on the other, it deals with the gender problem in the plight of the Dalit women. It brought into light the institution of marriage. The play depicts the gender deformity as well. Jyoti is presented as an educated, independent woman, but this does not make any difference in her life. She struggled with the brutal ways of life but failed to bring any positive change. The only change that she underwent through was accepting the harsh reality in which she was living and admitting her submission to the Dalit ways of life. She failed to separate the personality of Arun from the lover to the beast and accepted the demon and the god in Arun together. The division and hierarchization of the society bring alienation to Arun. So, to overcome his powerlessness, joylessness, and lovelessness, he became addicted to liquor and did loveless sex with Jyoti. His madness to reach the top and his work to be the top of the town dehumanizes him further. Conclusively, it can be said that Tendulkar was a realist writer. The play depicts the various levels of the society. It highlights the fact that not every step can bring a reformation. Through Arun and his dialogue, the atrocities and the plight is presented well, and his desire to avenge the wrongdoing is presented. Despite many social reformation changes, certain taboos took a longer time, efforts, space, and understanding to abolish. Any haste to bring a revolution may end in a more better state. The role of a childhood scripting may also leave one handicapped in making the right choices for themselves. The autobiography of Arun represents the rising middle class in a lower rung of society. Literature is used to raise their voices and speak of their injustices. Discussion of such work created a social space for the Dalit men. The Rain of the Blows and his abusive language depict the Dalit masculinity of Arun. Marriage as an essential institution is presented as nothing but a bundle of the blows and misery. Dalit women also face discrimination based on the gender at the hand of the Dalit men. Jasbir Jain, in her book Indigenous Roots of Feminism, Cultural Subjectivity and Agency, shared the criticism of the power who openly criticized the discriminated treatment that Dalit men faces in the hand of Dalit men. Dalit men, like upper caste, created their women subordinate and expected them to be self-sacrificing and self-effacing voices. She accused them for having the double standard as upper caste men. The outcome of such discrimination and prejudice eroded the dignity of the women, and it snatches from them the aspiration to bring improvement. The play also distinguished itself from the standard norms of the society. Jyoti is a bread earner in the family instead of Arun. Jyoti earns and Arun is spent on drinking. The drama triangle, which includes a victim, rescuer, and persecutor, is present. The role is presented in a play. The rescuer victim transaction ends up as a persecutor victim transaction. Arun was a victim of the upper caste. After marriage, his role shifted to persecutor. Nath in the beginning was the rescuer of Arun. Later, he wanted to rescue her daughter and failed to do this. M. Sarat Babu, in his book Indian Drama Today, said that the unreal idealism of the Nath resulted in Jyoti reflect the favorite role of rescuing, which impaired their conception of reality. The play is branded as anti-Dalit by the critics such as Vijay Tapas. The play brings us closer to the sufferings of the father who is a liberal and wanted to break the caste system. He sacrificed his daughter at the altar of his socio-political ideology. Thank you.
Thank you, Aliya, for sticking to time, but I apologize for rushing you like this. Right. So now I will be giving then again, I do not want to use the word feedback. It's just how I feel about everyone's contribution, because I really feel that all the four presenters and writers have given their best efforts, while they kind of, sort of put their ideas and their uh, weaving together of responses to everyday condition in terms of caste and how that impacts our ways of thinking and writing. So, to go back to the first presenter, Pragnesh. Now, Pragnesh's paper was really interesting because it argues for social transformation, and also I like the idea that how he has argued that education gets categorized according to, you see, one's caste position, particularly the person who is entitled to education, but then again, sort of, faces a lot of hurdle to reach the right person and also the right space in which he or she can study. I relate to this because there is something called quote unquote cultural capital, and this is very true for all of us who are candidates of literature. It's a bit different from, you see, pursuing science. I don't want to kind of draw any comparison on the basis of that in terms of methodology, but in terms of pedagogy, I think that if someone has, the power to capture the facts very quickly, then it is convenient for that person to bring together the data. But what about us as literature students? It's like, even if, first of all, I might not have the financial kind of standing to buy the books. And even if I get the books, maybe it is through only a trial and error method that I am studying the books properly. So it would be like by the time when I'm actually learning to write a good answer, I have already spent like 2 years or 3 years maybe of my graduation. So it gets reflected on the grades that I get, because I know that I myself being, you see, a second generation learner. So I do feel about this that for at least literature studies, there needs to be a very peaceful atmosphere, and a lot of help is actually required regarding this. Maybe the next generation, maybe if I have kids, then I'll be able to tell him or her that this is the book that you need to study in this time, and then to provide you a trajectory of learning. So yes, people who are actually kind of, restricted from that kind of an education, for them it is more difficult to actually sort of, gather that sense of fluency, and also that sense of self positioning that yes, yes, I'm doing right in this. Okay, because a lot of lack of confidence is present in case of, you see, the people who come from the marginal communities, and also in terms of, you see, our individual family upbringing. I mean, I do kind of, relate with students who come from rural Bengal, uh, and in their houses everyone speaks in Bangla, and how it is difficult for them to actually kind of, join in that collective study in English. So yeah, you have actually touched a very important point in terms of education. And also your paper looked at the problem in terms of, a biography. So the lived experience is very important. And you also did point out that the creation of individual and family role models amidst the downtrodden castes are also very important. So I congratulate you for taking up this particular topic. Thank you for that. The next presenter is Atmadeep. Atmadeep, I don't know whether you paint or not, but while I was going through your slides, I was fascinated to see that you have an eye for detail, that how you have actually looked into, you see, the color coding. And yes, color can be very, very important in terms of, you see, classification. As you see, it's basically an index of association. So yes, we do talk about Varna, but at the same time, you see that when the visual representations come, and I'm sure you have studied, because you have a taste for visual studies. I'm sure you have looked at Indian iconography and Indian aesthetics. And if you look at how the Hindu pantheon is depicted in the different gods and the goddesses, they have very interesting color differences in terms of skin color. So I mean, probably you see each local god or goddess had some anthropological connections, which has a lot of significance in terms of, to which caste that a particular deity was more important in compared to other castes. So I am drawing these references because from the title Bhimayana. So it's kind of the journey of the protagonist who kind of rose to that height through a lot of suffering in his own life. So yeah, it actually kind of brings this very mythopoeic kind of construct into the very real life sort of experience through the graphic novel, and the visuals kind of make it possible. So we have provided the overview of Ambedkar's biography in the visual framework of Ramayana, and you have also argued how the lack of quote-unquote historical awareness and quoting from your paper precludes our understanding of the caste condition, which is a very important point. And I also really liked how you brought the image and the content together in terms of visual experience. And hearing your presentation, it actually crossed my mind. It's just an idea that since you have based your research on a very particular rural art form, which has now entered, the commercial kind of commercialization of it, and has actually gone global. Because I have seen that many of the patterns of bond art, they are used in different contextual basis, including you see the Mondok Shojas in West Bengal during pujas. I was thinking if it is ever possible to kind of compile, keeping in mind the production and the publication process, of course, but we can go online if it's ever possible. That each local art form kind of takes one individual and of any gender, and he or she is kind of collaborating with an artist belonging to his or her own indigenous tribe slash community to depict the caste conditioning in his or her own indigenous way of painting. And all those paintings, all those narratives could be put together as a form of visual compendium. It's a Herculean task, but I was thinking, I felt very inspired while listening to your presentation. So thank you for kind of, and the paper was very well researched. You should publish your paper. So thank you, Atmadeep. Right, so the third presentation by Hitesh. Hitesh, thank you for kind of enlightening us regarding the narratorial experiences and the voices in Gujarati Dalit's short stories. I actually had no idea regarding this, so thanks to your endeavor that I have been able to learn. And what is very interesting is that you have tried to bring this notion that there seems to be a compulsive connection to caste differences despite progress since independence. And your paper has actually looked at the compulsion that kind of caste brings and its effect. And you have chosen the stories very well. I mean, I could understand from the your handling of the plots, that how each protagonist kind of refers to a fringe character and how he or she has been marginalized. For example, Vankar's story, The Sacred Thread, quote unquote, a sacred thread, it addresses the connection between caste identity and tradition and how that humiliates an individual. In Gadvi's quote unquote, Yes Sir, we also looked at the sense of ostracization in education, institution, and by politically powerful members. A very important story that you have selected. And Madha's story, Betrayal, also looks at how a well-mender by profession gets involved in campaigning and is deluded. It's very interesting. I'd like to read the story sometime. Well-mender, we call it Patkuar mystery in Bangla. Can be, you see, a very interesting study because you see water, and that gets again connected with you to the first section of Bhimayana, water. That it's the very water that is required for our survival, and the person who is kind of inventing it, he is the go-between, he or she is the go-between, you see, water as a natural resource to which everyone has right, and the people who are kind of segregating a person depending on one's caste position. You can, if you even publish it, I would also recommend you to kind of look at Tagore's Shakmocho and Chondalika. Chondalika also kind of looks at this very interesting scene where Ananda comes and Upali refuses to, not refuses, she is actually very scared to provide water from her well because she is actually belongs to the marginalized caste. And Ananda says that the water doesn't have any caste because water has been given to quench the thirst of the person, so it cannot have a caste of its own. So thank you for bringing up Madhav's story. It's a very interesting paper and discussion, and I really like the way that you have woven the three stories together. Thank you for that. And our last presenter, Aliya, you have really put a lot of effort. So congratulations from me, congratulations from all presidentians here and everyone who is listening to you. Listen to you. I really like the idea that how you have brought the reincarnation belief in your discussion. In fact, this is one area in which I have a lot of questions myself, and I do not have the answers to that. I do not have the scriptural knowledge to look at how karma kind of influences one's birth in a particular caste. But then again, I used to often ask questions when I was a child that if the reincarnation is supposed to kind of uplift a person towards liberation moksha, and if we kind of calculate each succeeding birth in terms of numerical ascendances, so like 0, then 2, then 4, then 6. Now say if I am born to a particular caste, and based on my karma, if I were a bad person, then I'm kind of thrown down to another caste. But then again, if the reincarnation provides room for everyone to access that liberation, then that means that I will not be able to remember everything from my past birth. So I cannot start from 0. I would go down to -6 or -4. So for me, in the new birth, it would be more difficult to reach even 0. So if I do not have, you see, all those access to all those morality principles, then how could I sort of, use my present birth to kind of climb up? So it's a very interesting point that you have looked up. I don't know. I would like to hear more discussions on the karma and the incarnation theory or concept from people who really work on that. My knowledge regarding this is absolutely meager, nothing. But it's very interesting that you have brought that up. You have also looked at, you see, the problems of psychological and the conjugal trauma and turmoil of intercaste marriage, because that is a very important issue. And I think with your paper actually completes the corpus of the Dispossessed, because you have looked at the woman's question and you have looked at the conjugal kind of condition. We have taken the discussion into, you see, the domestic sphere. So I really congratulate and thank you for that and the way that you have presented. Sorry that we had to rush you, but I congratulate all the presenters. So I really enjoyed each presentation, and I really learned a lot from you all. So now let's look at the questions that have come up. So there is one question for Atmadeep. This is from Hiranno. Hiranno writes, my question is for Mr. Atmadeep Dash. Do you think the aesthetically driven structurality of Bhimayana in exploring the Dalit experience and consciousness be transposed onto a critique of anthropocentric perspectives as well, in drawing an inherent connection between casteist views and anthropocentric dominance? So over to you, Atmadeep.
Hello, and thank you so much for your feedback, and thank you so much for asking this question. Yes, Bhimayana is an attempt, of course, that is based in the ethno-ecocentrism of that bone art. And I believe that when I was studying Bhimayana, I saw certain instances where it is not only anthropocentric and anthropomorphism. I saw that how each and everything, whether it is a living being or it is just an object, are connected. And thus, this novels, this graphic novel, through bone art, presents the inherent connectedness between living forms and non-living forms, whether it is nature or any other object, and whether it is just a human being or an animal. For instance, when I was studying it in a page where the first conversation between the man and the woman starts, I saw that they are sitting on a bench, and the bench was formed like a human being. It had a face, it had two hands, and it was holding them. So here it is getting personified. The bench is getting personified. In some places, humans are not being used. I mean, the personification is not being used. Rather, the objects are just animated. Whether it is the speech bubble, and it is just the castle that turns into a lion. Even in the case of the train, it has eyes, it has a mouth. So certain attributes of making it animated are given while writing this novel, and this is a very common feature of Gone art. And the writers, the painters use this feature in Vijayana. So, they can talk about the connectedness between nature and human beings, and also between each person.
Okay, thank you, Atmadeep, for your answer. And is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or kind of provide your feedback or responses to all the four presenters? Please feel free to share your views and your opinions. All right, so Ushani, I think there are no more questions. So if there are no more questions, then we can conclude this session. Okay, so thank you so much. I'd like to thank the presenters again. Thank you, Pragnesh.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Atmadeep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hitesh, and thank you, Aliya.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable feedback, and that will surely give us confidence.
All of you have worked really well, and I really appreciate the efforts that you all put in. As I said in the beginning of the session, that I'd like to use the word discussion and not chair. Being a chair is a very difficult thing that we have to rush the presenters. But thank you for all your efforts. So, and would like to stay in touch, because all of this is something, a new area for me. So as I repeatedly said, that I learned a lot from you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So with this, we can conclude the session. Thank you, Ishani, and thank you, Shuru.